So Claude just announced officially Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is the latest model that they have developed, and it's now available to us. Let's go ahead and check it out in this video where I'm going to go through their announcement, but also the main points, benefits of this new model. So we're going to go ahead and look at this announcement, the main points, but also test things out and go from there. Let's go ahead and get started. So you can see here, Claude announcement, Claude 3.7 Sonnet and Claude Code. By the way, in this video, I'm not going to talk about Claude Code. The main reason is because if you follow this link somewhere, I'll be able to go and watch a video where I introduce Claude Code. Today, 3.7 Sonnet, our most intelligent model to date and the first hybrid reasoning model on the market. So reasoning models in the market is the thing right now, and started with, of course, OpenAI, and then R1, DeepSeek, and of course all of these major companies that create models. They're running with it. The idea is that these large language models have this thinking capability, but not just thinking in general, but deep thinking, and shows us exactly, we can see all the process that it goes through to get to the result. But also these models are able to reason at a capacity that's really high, even at a PhD level at times. So Claude 3.7 Sonnet can produce near instant responses or extended step-by-step thinking that is made visible to the user. So visible to the user, as I said, you can actually see as it thinks through a problem. API users also have fine-grained control over how long the model can think. This is a huge thing, because we can control how long the text that's coming out, how long the model is going to be thinking for. Anthropic with 3.7 Sonnet delivers these advancements in computer use, agentic capabilities, so lots of agentic capabilities, because that is what's been talked about in 2025 and beyond, but also this complex reasoning and content generation. So it is a full loaded large language model. And one of the things that stood out to me with Claude 3.7 Sonnet is the fact that Anthropic is actually going in the right direction. As you can see here, we've developed with Claude 3.7 Sonnet with a different philosophy from other reasoning models on the market. They say just as humans use a single brain for both quick responses and deep reflection, we believe reasoning should be an integrated capability of frontier models rather than a separate model entirely. This unified approach also creates a more seamless experience for users. I love it because it's about not dividing, having robotic AI, and here are the users trying to seamlessly put all together, because at the end of the day, these models are supposed to help us humans to do our jobs better, not to eradicate us. So I like this approach that they are going for. So they go through the process of their philosophy. You can go ahead and read and everything, but at the core of everything is this extended thinking mode that is attached to this new model, Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And one thing that also talks about here is that Sonnet, through the API, users can also control the budget for thinking to make sure that you are congruent with your budget, with how much you're willing to spend when using the API. So it says here you can tell Claude to think for no more. It says here you can tell Claude to think for no more than n tokens. So this is again with the NP with n up to its output limit of 128k tokens. Now the great thing here is that 128k token is a lot, considering that this is about 15 times more than what the previous model was able to output. What does that really mean? If you're using Claude model, especially Claude 3.5 or 3.7 in this case, model for coding, which that's what most of us use, that means then you're able to build these applications quicker and easier. So now you have this rich code generation that happens, and also detailed content creation, because you don't have that limit. The limit now has expanded when it comes to tokens. Now, there is software engineering bench verification here, accuracy and everything. So you can see that when it comes to Claude 3.7 compared to OpenAI, DeepSeek R, OpenAI O1, right, or 3 high, these are pretty low. Even within the Claude 3.5 Sonnet new, right? We are 3.7 now. It was pretty good. So this was comparing to any other one. It was pretty high. However, with, in this case, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, when it comes to software engineering benchmarks here, you can see that it's at 62.3%. That's really, really high. As you can see, the other ones are tagging along. So this is exciting. So we still see this battle of these big companies trying to optimize their models and bring them to the market. And we are the ones who gain everything really when it comes to this. And next we have this agentic tool use. So it says here, Sonnet achieves state-of-the-art performance on Tau Bench. So Tau is a framework, as it says here, that tests AI agents on complex real-world tasks with user and tool interactions. So this actually is something that is tested. That's the benchmark on when testing actual real-world applications running on these large language models. So that's pretty impressive. So if you go to the docs link here, you can see that we have information about extended thinking. So they talk about how extended thinking gives Claude 3.7 Sonnet enhanced reasoning capabilities for complex tasks, but also providing transparency into the steps that it takes to the processing before it delivers its final answer. So they talk about how extended thinking works. So Claude creates this thinking content blocks that you can see that says, okay, this is what is happening. The model is thinking before it actually comes up with the answer or the response. So the API response will include thinking and the text blocks. And what happens is that you're going to have something like this. So you're going to have this payload, type is thinking, and it's going to give all the thinking blocks. And you can see for each thinking process has its own signature. And then we have the type text. So this is the actual answer which user is going to be able to get as the response. Okay, so this is the thinking part of things and the answer. And the good thing about here is that as you build your applications, you're able to distinguish. You can go ahead and just get the text, which is going to be the answer, or even include the thinking capabilities or thinking that the model is going through. All right, so let's go ahead and click on code. This is the code we can use to just test things out. Now, this assumes that you have the Anthropic API keys and everything. Okay, so what I like about this is that, of course, in this case, we're using the latest model 3.7 Sonnet. And there is this number here. Now this may change by the time you watch this video, but then we can say max tokens that we want is about 20,000. And then for the thinking block here, we can say the type, we want to say enable. So you can enable or disable it. So this is great because this is actually going to make it easier for our tokens consumption. And the great thing is that if you say enabled, then you can say the budget token is about 16,000. So beyond that, then it's going to cut that off. So this is really helpful for your budget. So let's go ahead and put together a simple project with everything set up, and so I can show you exactly what's going on here. So as you can see here, I have this simple project here. We are importing Anthropic. We're loading, in this case, our Anthropic API, Anthropic, and then we can just go ahead and say client messages and go ahead and create and pass the Anthropic model as you see here. So max tokens 20,000, and I can go ahead and say disabled, and this will tell me that thinking is going to be disabled, which means we're now going to see the actual thinking tags. All right, so I'm using exactly the example that we saw in the documentation. Run this real quick. Looks like I'm having issues here. Okay, so if it's disabled, then I don't need to pass that. So let me try quick and let's run. Okay, so as you can see, there we go, we get the result. So it gives us the input tokens, the output tokens for 100 and all of that. So this is the text content, the text block, as you saw. This is what we're getting. Obviously, if we change to go back to what we had before to enable, you will see, I'm going just to cap this vary to about 1600 just to see what will happen. If we run this, we should see at the end the thinking part happening or being also output. All right, so here is our payload. You can see it's more now because we have enabled the thinking block. So you can see now it's got the thinking block. The question is asking whether there are infinitely many primes p such that all of that. And then at some point, it goes through all the thinking And you may want that for your application, of course. And then at some point we get the final results. Okay, but you can see that the tokens is 54. The tokens output is about 1524. So you get a little bit more, and tells us the model we're using and assistant and all of that. All right, so that's really, really good. The other thing we can do here is this object that we get, client message create, we can actually say as stream, as such, all this information as stream, and stream everything out. Let me go ahead and comment this out and make sure that this code is actually, and then I'm going to change this with that as stream. So we're going to go through the process and stream out all those blocks. Stream to make sure. And then let's say 160 or 16,000. But let's go ahead and run. By the way, this code, all of that is from the documentation. You can see it's streaming pieces, thinking, and at some point it should stop. Okay, so I ended up with an API status error here, overloaded. So this probably has to do with the amount of information that's coming in. So I would probably change the question, because the question we had probably had a lot going on, right? So I'm going to change the question to the question that we have in the documentation. So this is going to be simpler, but you get the idea. Let me go ahead and run again just for completion here. Okay, so there we go. So this is a different question. Of course, should be a little bit shorter in terms of the tokens coming out. Okay, as you can see, this actually works. And then the block complete, and then we get the response as you see there. This is really important to start looking into, start seeing how to use these tools, especially this new Claude 3.7 Sonnet. There's a lot going on, but you get the idea. Keep in mind that as you use these tools, you need to figure out what is it that you're trying to build. Okay, that's what you do, reading this documentation and reading what's new, what is it that we're gaining with Claude 3.7 Sonnet. I think it's really going to be important for you to start understanding exactly how all of this works, especially if you actually use this. And keep in mind that also that all these tools, they pretty much follow the same conventions, right? So if you're thinking about O1 or DeepSeek R1 or any other model there, the idea is still the same. There's this sort of a standardization of how things work. And so understanding how this one works, it's going to be easier for you to understand how any other model out there works. All right, so next is, of course, looking at the pricing and token uses for extended thinking. Keep in mind, extended thinking, that means there's a lot of thought process going back and forth, which means it will take up a lot of tokens, which means also money. And so extended thinking tokens count towards the context window and are billed as output tokens, since thinking tokens are treated as normal output tokens. That's good. They also count towards your rate limits. Be sure to account for this increased token usage when planning your API usage. And they have here for Claude 3.7 Sonnet, the pricing is input tokens is about $3 per million tokens. Output tokens, including thinking tokens, this is important to distinguish, is $15 per million tokens. If you want to do some sort of comparison with, for instance, O1, it's probably around the same kind of concept, but you can do that yourself. But the other thing you see, we have prompt caching write is $3.75 per million token, and prompt caching read is 30 cents per million token. This is one of the addition to Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is now we are able to do prompt caching writing as well, prompt caching reading. Okay, that way you don't reuse or keep using a lot of tokens. So there's the caching that is also happen to save on cost. And also the extended output capabilities. This is in beta. What does that mean? Well, it says here Claude can now, or Claude 3.7 Sonnet, can produce substantially longer responses than previous models with support for up to 120K output tokens. That's 15 times more, as you see here. We've talked about that. This expanded capability is particularly effective for extended thinking use cases involving complex reasoning, rich code generation, and comprehensive content generation. Because you're using these models to help you build applications and so forth. If you're coding, that means there's a lot of information, there's a lot of content being created. And so having this 128K output tokens which is 15,000 more than what we had before, the previous model. This is huge. Okay, so this feature can be enabled by passing Anthropic beta header of this. So if you look at the code here, we can do that as betas in this case, and say output this. Okay, so this is still beta. This may change later, but that's the idea. So you can actually control your output tokens, extended output capabilities, which is welcome. All right, so there's a lot that we've talked about in this video, and it's really exciting because that means if you're using Claude 3.7 or previous 3.7 Sonnet in this case, or previous model, to help you with coding or just general activities, this is huge news for so many reasons. You can read more, but most importantly, the code side of things, the content creation side of things, now you have extended thinking, which is attached to your model, and you can use that for many use cases. And you have the control of saying, this is how much I want to spend, essentially, in terms of tokens and all of that. And that's huge. I'm sure we're going to be seeing other models trying to follow suit here as well. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that like button, and also subscribe if not subscribed, because most of you actually who love this content are not subscribed. So go ahead and do that to support our channel. And till next time, be well.